Okay, just for posterity, this was the breakout group for session 6. And we had Donna Gibbons-Davidson here, Maria Salinas, our two facilitators, Orlando and Alondra. But it appears that no one else is entering the session room. So we like the topic, but seems like the rest of the audience did not. So the rest of the team has gone back to the main room. And I will wait here momentarily to see if anyone makes their way. If not, I will exit and go back to the main room. Orlando, you're back.
Hello.
Orlando, you're muted. You're muted.
Hey, I'm back. Yeah. Folks are still being assigned to rooms. That process will still taking a little minute. So I'll stay here in case anybody wants to have, this conversation. And I'll bring in the other facilitators if anyone is interested. But it looks like it still may be absolved if we only get one participant.
It'll be a very robust conversation, like it was yesterday.
I'll be here either way. I'm twisting hair right now, so I'm gonna let y'all in on some secrets.
Hey, Miss Sherry, how you doing?
I'm about to see the secrets right now, because by the end of this thing, I'm gonna look different than I looked at the beginning. Okay?
That's all right.
That's what's happening right now. Okay, I'm bringing it all to the table. Okay, but I mean, I was excited when this came up when I got the email, because this has been something that I talk to people a lot about. I guess I consider myself middle-aged. I'll be 41 next week. And so a lot of the younger 20-something organizers, we hang out, we in the same spaces, but I'm like, but I'm newer to organizing and like that sort of work. So it's really interesting to be new to it at this age and like discovering so much stuff that I never knew growing up in Detroit like my whole life. Like I told somebody, I just found out who Grace and Jimmy Lee Boggs were in 2018. And I was like, how did I live here my whole life and nobody ever said, like what? And my mother definitely doesn't know. She's like, who? What are we talking about? And I'm like, how is this possible? How is this my life? So it's really interesting, but that's something I've been really big on. It's like working with our elders and our young people together. Like, how do we get all of us at the table really like loving on each other, not just for the sake of, okay, we need X amount of people for this program and we need to make sure, we hit these metrics. Like really, how do our seniors know that somebody cares about them so they don't feel like they're in danger when a bunch of youth show up on their street? Or how do we make our young people feel safe that, the elders that are coming out on their porch aren't about to call the police on them? They're gonna say, hey, y'all want some to eat? Or, how do we get back to that? And kind of, I guess it's kind of good to be in that middle age generation, because it's like, I remember that. So I remember when we used to have everybody on the street kind of looking out, that's Miss such and such, or, oh man, something happened with him, go get his brother, go get his, because we knew who those people were. Or if somebody was going through something mentally, people knew how to respond. Oh, that's such and such. Tell him his grandmother looking for him, even if his grandmother been dead for 5 years, but mentally telling him his grandmother is looking for him would calm him down and he would go back to his house, versus calling the police and having, a whole different altercation. And so just kind of trying to figure out how to bring that back.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. What you're describing is a connected community.
Yeah. And that's, I always tell people, my life tagline is connection over everything. Like if we don't have programs, that's okay. If we got connection, we'll be okay. The problem is we got a lot of damn programs and ain't nobody connected. We got a lot of programs nobody's even coming to, because nobody even knows how to get in touch with the people who need the stuff in the program. And so we got a lot of programs that aren't even being used in this area. And it's like, are you serious? How is this possible? Like, and even like the internet thing we were talking about yesterday. I live in an area, if I drive 2 minutes from my house over to Davidson, you have no internet connection. Your phone literally just shuts, like you got nothing. And I'm like, how are kids over here supposed to have access to their online education? If your job could let you work from home, but you don't have any internet access, that literally blows that out of the water for you. Like, how are people certifying for freaking unemployment. Like there's so
Right.
many things.
Because you have to do that every week.
Right?
You certify every week for unemployment. Thank you all for joining us.
More people. Look.
I see. Can Aisha? I hope I'm not butchering your name.
I was gonna say, I know I can't.
It's Aisha. It's okay.
Okay.
Aisha. Hi, Aisha. Nice to see you. And Rumi? Did I say?
Hello. Yeah, hello.
Hi, welcome. So my trusted co-hosts are gone. I'm trying to get them back so that we can, get the conversation started. I think that they wanted some, a critical mass of people, and I think we only have a couple of folks. So I'm trying to get them back on now. And we can get started. Thank y'all for choosing us.
Hey, Orlando, do you think everybody in the main room has been distributed now to the sessions?
I don't know.
There was still quite a few people when I got pulled over that were still over there.
I don't know. So I guess we want to give it a couple minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, we'll give it a couple minutes. Until then, I will be thoroughly entertained by watching Miss Sherry do her hair.
Listen, I'll turn it around so you can see the back. Like this is what
All right.
Today is one of those days we're using the lock method, a little leave-in. Okay, then you got to follow up with the oil and the cream. Okay, don't mess around. Like you got to get this together if you want it to last. Okay, this is what has to happen. My kids are always laughing like, "Mom, you do your hair anywhere." I'm like, "Listen, you got to get this thing together. By the time I'm done, it's gonna be like, oh, okay, that's what was happening." I was gonna have the camera off all day, but I was like, you know what? It's weird. Like it's weird behind the camera. I'm like, yeah, you may as well. Yep, I'm right here. Exactly what I was thinking. That's how we do it at home anyway. You have all the conversations while you doing hair and your hair and somebody else's hair and everybody else's hair. So yeah, this is life right now.
Yeah.
It would have been done earlier, but we had plumbers and sewage and all kind of stuff. And I was like, oh no, it's 4 o'clock. So camera off,
right
camera
back,
on.
guys. I'm gonna check on them, what's happening in the main room, and I'll be right back.
Okie dokies. We'll be here. Okay.
Sherry, I don't know if you heard all the conversation yesterday, but I thought it was very instructive when the panel was talking about specifically, when you talk about a phrase like defund the police, right?
Absolutely.
And so to the youth, it means a certain thing. And they're very clear and they understand what that means and what they're after. But to some of the elders, it means something completely different. And so they're like, well, wait a minute. I thought the panel did a nice job saying, look, you got to go to people where they are. Yep. You got to use a language that they understand, and you got to have some patience and grace for people that have opposing views until you kind of get to a point and say, wait, when we say defund the police, it doesn't mean what you're thinking, right? And it means the following. And I thought that was, it was a very powerful discussion because in the time in which we live, a phrase or two sets people off in one direction. It doesn't necessarily need to be that way. We don't need to be so quick to judge, right?
Absolutely. And I think it starts with asking a question like, hey, when you hear this, what do you hear? Because some people hear what do you hear when I say defund the police? Not even, I believe it, you should believe, what do you hear when I say defund the police can help kind of cut out a lot of the confusion, because if I say defund the police to my mother, she's like, what? Like even just the word defund is not a word people use a lot. And so when you think about a lot of our elders, it's like, wait, what? I know what a refund is. I know what I'm not sure I know what a defund is. Oh, well, spend less money on police. Less money? We can't get them to come as it is. Like, what are we talking about? And so there's that whole conversation. Like I was talking to some of my 20-something counterparts, and I were having a conversation about defund the police, and it was like, how do you explain this to other people, who probably wouldn't buy into it? And I said, well, what I will usually say to people is like, okay, we spend a lot of money on police, more than we spend on anything else, right? And they're like, yeah, but we need to spend more. We need to spend this. And I'm like, but do we need to have a tank? And I usually have a picture of the tank from this summer where they were showing, I'm like, do we need a tank? That's $250,000. And it's like, wait, what? our police got tanks, but why? Yeah, exactly. Because we don't need that. We could use tank money for something else, or, you know, we could use money for certain types of weapons on something else. And when we're going back historically and even seeing footage of people in the 70s saying the police don't need these type assault weapons and all kind of stuff, and it's like, these are the same conversations we're having again and again that just keep coming back. And it's like, this is why we have to do a better job of educating each other quickly, and really having some of those tough conversations and saying, hey, here's what I'm saying when I say defund police. I'm saying take away the tanks, take that 500,000, put it into this, because we know we need investment in better internet in all of our neighborhoods so that all of our kids can have access to the education that's supposed to be here for everybody. Most people can understand that and go, oh, well, yeah, you shouldn't, you know, if we spend $10 on police and we spend $2 on education, well, where do you think most of those kids gonna go to get a half-ass education? They're gonna end up with the police. They go, and a lot of people understand that. So I think it's just keeping it basic and having those conversations a lot.
Agreed. Thank you.
So they are still, so more people are coming.
Still sorting? Yeah.
Yeah, they are still sorting. So the group, the reason why we disbanded a little too early, I'm told, because there are folks who are trying to get in this breakout session, but Camille is having to do everybody by hand. Something happened with the pre-schedule.
So I don't know. I didn't see anybody show up other than maybe one person. So I apologize. I was like, well, people don't want to come and I don't want to, you know. So anyway, I think while we're waiting, we can just get to know who's here. I heard some great conversation from Sherry. So
yeah, Donna.
I'm Donna.
You want to introduce yourself? And
sure.
then we can
I'm Donna Givens Davidson. I'm president and CEO of Eastside Community Network and the other co-host of Authentically Detroit with Orlando Bailey.
Hey, next up on my screen, Sherry, I see you next.
Hi, I'm Sherry Smith. I'm a lot of stuff. Right now, I am the co-lead for Central Community Soup, which is kind of in the District 2, kind of Livernois, Lodge, Davidson area. And then I take part in a lot of community stuff. So we headed up the Hope Village Farmers Market for a couple of years. I steward a community garden on Linwood and Oakman. And I'm a part of Community Movement Builders. So I'm just kind of all over the place.
Awesome. Thank you. Rumi, want to introduce yourself?
Say one thing. And I don't ever want, I have to stop forgetting this. I'm also, beginning in January, I'm going to be a lecturer at Columbia University on sustainability in Detroit. So I'm really excited about that.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Honestly, I told her you wouldn't be able to shut me up about that. Every other sentence would be like, well, you know.
I spent so much time with you. That's the first time I'm hearing about that. So congratulations. And I'm sorry.
Rumi, you're up next. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name's Rumi, they, them pronouns. I am part of the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition, and then I've been doing some work with Greenlight Black Futures to help work towards ending surveillance in Detroit. I'm still kind of getting my bearings. I want to be in the city proper next year, but, you know, I want to get involved in as many community things as I can in the meantime.
Oh, sweet, Rumi. You guys work with our good friend, Tawana Petty.
Yes, love her.
Love Tawana Petty. Welcome. Madhavi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Madhavi Reddy. I'm with the Community Development Advocates of Detroit, CDAD for short. And I am also the interim director of the Master of Community Development program at University of Detroit Mercy. Nice to meet you all.
Madhavi got all the jobs.
No, you have like 10. I have 2. So.
Alondra, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Alondra. I'm from Southwest Detroit. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm currently studying at Michigan State University. So go green if you're from MSU. And yeah, we're just waiting for Maria, but I'm texting her right now. So sorry if I'm looking away from my camera.
and Aza. I think I said it right.
You're close. It's Aisha. Hey everyone. So I'm from Hamtramck and I'm going to school at Wayne State right now for social work and I'm interning at Congress of Communities. So excited for this conversation.
Aisha. All right, thank you. So this is really meant to be a free-flowing discussion. This was a session that was added yesterday.
Did Rick Parada
Oh,
go?
Rich. Sorry, Rich.
Thank you, Orlando. Hey, no problem. Rich Parada with the Macmillan Group, taking notes here and just supporting the facilitators. Macmillan Group has been working with a lot of community development initiatives in the city of Detroit for a long period of time. And Donna and when Maria gets back and all, we've all worked together on a couple different sessions like this to try and make sure that interests are aligned and no one's trying to replicate what everybody else is doing so we can keep things moving forward.
Awesome. Happy to have you in the room, Rich. So this session is meant to be a continuation of a really compelling discussion that was happening yesterday around intergenerational collaboration and organizing and planning and then community development, intergenerational discourse around differences and similarities in activism, right? And so what we tried to do is curate a panel with mentors and their mentees, teachers and their pupils, to have this conversation about intergenerational leadership. And so Maria Salinas and Alondra Alvarez have had a relationship for years over at Congress and Communities. Maria will probably be joining us momentarily. And I worked for Donna Davidson. So she's a lecturer and she married. I got to remember the Davidson. I worked for Donna Davidson at Eastside Community Network for 4 years and was taught and mentored by her. And so I wanted, I guess we can start with Donna, and I want to get Maria's viewpoint on this around your personal philosophy around investing in tomorrow's leaders.
Wow. So about 35 years ago, I was dipping my toes in nonprofit work. And there were people who invested in me and taught me the tricks of the trade. Some people know who some of those people are. Linda Campbell at Detroit People's Platform was my first boss. She really inspired me to actually complete my bachelor's degree and to take myself seriously as a person who had something of value to contribute. And I remember being in my 20s, I couldn't wait till turn 30 because then people would have to take me seriously, right? That was going to be the year when I was going to be seen as bringing value to the table, but nothing really happened between 20. I mean, I learned some things between 25 and 30, but it's not like my brain all of a sudden got formed and I was able to have valuable opinions. What ended up happening when I was 30, then I didn't really look 30, so it didn't help. But I was like, I'm 30 now, y'all. I want to wear a sign with the word 30 on it. But for me, it really is something that I experienced as a young person who had so much energy, so much idealism, so much I wanted to do. And I just saw the world differently. I love my mother, I love my family, but I saw the world differently than my parents did. I saw things they did not. And I was able to bring those experiences to bear in situations that if you had not had a person, I honestly believe, who was young enough to really not see things and not, be so afraid of stepping on all of those feet because we weren't even aware they existed. And, our enthusiasm was great. I remember working weekends, going to sober jams with clients because that's what they were doing and I had time to do it. And I went to this conference in Georgia and I was really excited to speak, nationally. And when I got done, I thought I had a great presentation. And this lady raised her hand. She said, "Miss, do you have a husband? Do you have children? Because how can you do all of that?" Well, that's what you got out of what I had to say. But at the same time, the reality is that I didn't have a husband. I didn't have kids. I also had time. So I think that for me, change agents come at a young age, usually. When you look at Martin Luther King being 26 years old, when he did the march on the
Montgomery
Birmingham, yeah, but the Birmingham bus boycott, he was 26 years old. And he led a national movement. He had the energy, he had the courage, he didn't have the fear, he didn't have a mortgage, he didn't have people he owed, he had idealism on his side. And so I get excited working with young people. I think that young people bring excitement to everything that we do. And I never want to be the person like those many people who tried to shut me up.
Thank you for that, Donna. Thank you for that. While we wait on Maria, I'm going to call on Madhavi. Madhavi also leads an organization here in the city that has sort of a young staff. Madhavi, talk to us a little bit about your leadership philosophy and how that leads you to continue to invest in young people.
Well, first, I would like to start by saying I tell people all the time that if you do not have your own mentor that's under the age of 30, that maybe you're not looking in the right places for inspiration and places to learn. That is sort of like reciprocal, maybe not based on age, but I think that, if you're going to do this kind of work, or really any kind of work, that you should have mentors that are much younger than you, so you're constantly learning. So it's sort of a two-way street. I do have there are a few generations represented in my office, which is quite lovely. People talk a lot about how there's not a lot of young people who want to do community development work, and I sort of say that's not actually true. I think there's some work we have to do in the sector about making it a good place to work, sort of change some norms around the expectations of giving your whole life to your work, and supporting staff self-care. There are some things I think in our organizational cultures that we need to change, and those ideas seem to be coming more from sort of that younger staff. And I will say that my age starts with a 4. So I am definitely part of a generation that gets sort of left out of this intergenerational narrative a lot. We hear a lot, boomers, millennials, the younger, I forget, younger than millennials generation. All the names are hard to keep.
Generation Z.
Yeah, so I am sometimes known as Generation X, or this very bizarre 3-year time frame of people called Xennials. But we are famous for being the first people to understand that we would not do as well financially or maybe socially than our parents. And so I think people my age are really a good bridge between the two generations we sort of talk about all the time. So I take that quite seriously to say that I think I can sort of understand both sides. And another thing, I think it's really just important to lean into empathy. It's very easy. I hear a lot of people these young people, or these old people. I think it's really important, as it is with anything else, to really lean into empathy, really try to understand some of those kinds of behaviors. And I will speak for my my own family. They're immigrants from India, quite conservative culture, and I grew up being told you better be an accountant, or you have to be a doctor, or they're never gonna respect you. Why are you doing this with your life? And it used to sort of upset me until I really started thinking about why why my parents in their own experience were saying those kinds of things to me out of love. And though I was frustrated, I sort of shifted a little bit of how I was seeing that. So that's also how I think I approach all of the relationships, in whether it's staff or in work. And then I am the one who sometimes gets in trouble for saying things in public meetings. I tell people, you can't say things like, why do all these young people wear these clothes and they hang out at the basketball court? The second you say things like that, they're gone from this conversation for a long time. So I really also am of the opinion that people who are older, people that are younger, but I will speak for sort of my own generation, really watching that and calling each other out on creating welcoming spaces for people of all generations. And I seem to be having a lot of those conversations with people that are even older than myself about how we can't show up that way. It's not working. That was a very long speech, but
No,
thank you for
it's
the
good.
moment.
I especially love the piece where you talk about checking your peers when they, sort of say some things that are just not the thing to say anymore.
Right.
I want
It's
to
not
put
even just about saying them. It's really about examining why you say that and why you feel that way in the first place. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
No. It's meant to be that way. I think, Donna and I used to have this conversation all the time around, you know, the desire for older folks to want to correct and critique younger folks without first showing them love, without first showing them that they care. Alondra, who cared for you first, and how did you get into this work?
So Maria Salinas is actually who like got me into all this. Honestly, it's been such a blessing meeting her. I met her when I was 10 years old. My sister was working at COC, and then I needed a babysitter, so I would just go with my sister. And Maria was actually like, I'm just gonna put you through our high school program. And I was like, I'm a middle schooler. Like, what do you mean a high school program? But I remember the whole time she guided me and she sat there. Like, we went to go see Angela Davis. I remember it was like 2013. And Maria was like, just sit by me. And like, she was explaining everything that they were saying because there was like big terms. We're at U of M. Like, I was 13. Like, I didn't know what they were talking about. But I still remember Angela Davis talking about the school to prison pipeline, and the way that Maria was breaking it down to me and making me understand. I remember from that day on, I just knew I could trust Maria, and she was someone who wanted to like invest in me and just make sure that I was aware of everything going on. And since then, I've just been like with COC. I never left. I went back I went to college and I still come back and help them any way possible. But I think it was because of that, Maria really wasn't just like using youth, like, oh, I have a youth board. She was actually taking her time like with us. And yeah, that's who kind of got me into this work, and she's here now. We keep talking about her, so we can let her introduce herself.
Hey everybody, I am honored to have Alondra. She is going to be our mayor, possibly the first Latina president of the United States of America. When you grab young people as young as so there's 4 of them. I call them the Mexican Kardashians. There's 4 sisters, and they're amazing. And so her older sister, I had her at 8 years old as my Girl Scout back in the 90s. And she is now my board chair for my organization. And she, helped her to push her to do everything. She now has her master's degree and is a dean at the Academy of America's school, which these young ladies went through. But, for me, it's really like cultivating them since as young as you can get them. And now it's like sky's the limit. And I feel like, the topic we're going to talk about today is how do we, Alona trusts me and she knows me. And there's a sense of respect and everything. But if I was to get another, how old are you now, Alonda? 21, 22?
I'm 20, but I turned 21 in January. So.
Okay. They might not be as open to a person like me that is older, has a position, has a pretty decent salary. They might think, I have a lot of privilege. I have built my privilege, and it isn't organized, and it isn't what I've done. I just make different choices and good choices. But young people don't know that. And they see me and they might think, wow, like Maria, she's sold out. I hear that from young people, not about me, but about other elders. And it really kind of bothers me because I really want to know where does that come from? And how do we start really addressing that and listening to young people to figure out what is it that they can teach us? Where can we learn from young people to really start dismantling that? I'm not saying that there hasn't been people in our neighborhood that have utilized positions, because I know a few, to better themselves, and they got them and then they went away. I'm not one of those people. Donna's not one of those people. I mean, there's a lot of us that really are not those people. And so that is really why I believe we need to start creating something for this era right now. As young people I'm all about young people, I'm about youth, and making a place and a space for them, and making sure that we value them. And I think if we do that, that we can grow something that's going to intertwine elders also, because we have a benefit to this movement. So
Right.
that's kind of why I'm here. Yeah.
If I could
Yeah,
just
go ahead,
comment on that. Nobody that I know would ever say, I don't like children, right? Especially nobody in this business. Everybody says they love youth, right? Everybody who runs their office loves young people. They may cut schools, they may cut programs for young people, but they love them, right? So that's the socially acceptable thing. And a lot of times we really do think we love people, young people, and a lot of times we do love young people. But the question is, how do we show up with them? So I have a real life example that to me is so emblematic of how we sometimes show up. Two real quick ones. We have an event. We decide we're going to have, for the first time, an after party where we're going to have a DJ playing young people's music. And because it's a Zoom event, it's pre-recorded, okay? So everybody's down with this, everybody's excited. We get the pre-recorded tape. The day of the event, the morning of the event, I had 2 of my senior staff reach out to me and say, we cannot possibly play this. And I said, why not? Music is just terrible, blah, blah, blah. This is just not us. This is not who we are. It's like, well, it may not be who we are, but it's who they are. I mean, we had a young person cultivate this playlist, and it's who they are. Now, if I had a chance to do it over again, I probably would have asked for the radio version, but I didn't. So we had a young person reached out to a colleague to create this, video with music. It was a DJ, and then we had break dancing and everything in the DJ. They put a lot of effort into it, and then get told this is just not us. And so I'm having to go back and forth with my staff, explaining to them that if this is not us, it's our young people. And if our young people are not part of us, then what are we saying? That we have to figure out. So I said, why don't we just put up a warning saying, one of those parental advisories saying, listen, if you want to go any further, understand there may be some words you don't want to hear. So we went forward with the event. We played it, right? So we also had this singer who was singing like my generation's music. And so she went first. And the young people who knew about this conflict were listening, and they listened to all of the, inappropriate things said in the music that was my generation. They're like, oh yeah, okay, that's okay when they say it, right? So anyway, long story short, we had the DJ went forward, and everybody really enjoyed it. We actually had people who were, some of the most respectable people on the call saying, hey, can I get a copy of that playlist? That was a great playlist. And, but it speaks to our fear of embracing who young people are. We like you when you aren't like you. You know what I mean? And then the other example real quickly is we had a staff person who came to a staff meeting. I wasn't at the staff meeting, and gave an idea and expressed an idea. And they expressed the idea. They were really excited about how they could do things differently. And they were immediately shut down, first of all, for talking out of order, because it was not their turn to talk first. That they were supposed to go after a manager. Now we have about 22 people in our office. So I don't, we're too hierarchical for that, right? In my opinion. And then the second piece of that was they were told that they had to bring that to their department and discuss it internally before bringing it to the whole staff. I said, well, who wants to? So the staff person ends up feeling like nobody cares what I bring. And these are preventable errors that really speak to, if I value you, I value your ideas more than hierarchy. If I value you, I value hearing things that I may not even agree with or understand, because if this is your culture, then I can't reject it without having you feel like I'm rejecting you. And we all feel it ourselves when we go places, and it's like, well, it's not that I dislike Black people. I just don't like when Black people act so Black, or Latino act so Latino, or, whatever the bias is that keeps us oppressed. So I think we have to reach beyond what we say we feel, and create power and figure out how we empower people to act on their visions. With young people, I don't even try to be the person who reaches out to them because I am just not a credible youth outreach worker anymore. I mean, I have to be honest with you, I don't mind mentoring, but that's not my job. We have a 24-year-old woman who's great. They look at her, they identify her, they believe in her, she understands them. So it's also sometimes stepping aside, and it's my job to support the person who's most likely to be that positive influence. And then they can bring them in, and once they get them connected, they can introduce them to me, and they'll find out I'm a pretty cool person, and we all love each other.
You know what, Donna, you bring up a great point, because I think this was a point of contention yesterday in some of what we discussed, and that is you have an affinity for literally youth, young folks in junior high school and in high school and in college. But then you have younger folks who work in, who have jobs, who work in this industry, who work within community development, mid-management, on their way to mid-management, maybe not just yet, coordinator status, who also feel like this point of, contention around tactics used or routes chosen to get to where we are all trying to go. And so, Maria, you were part of the conversation yesterday, and one of the critiques came from an older organizer who had a critique for Nakia Wallace and how she, the language that she chose around being on the right side of history and the wrong side of history, and tactics being different but not respected. Maria, you're an organizer at heart. How do you make room for tactics that differ from yours without tokenizing young folks?
Yeah, so, fortunately or unfortunately, I was born in a community that's the most multicultural, multilingual community in the city of Detroit, which is Southwest Detroit. I was born from an Italian father, a Mexican mother, and born in Detroit, went to Black schools my whole life. My best friends were Black. And so I had to become that chameleon very early on. And it taught me how to be very versatile and I had a skill very early on. And I was one of those I wasn't that good kid. I was a rule breaker, risk taker. And so I didn't do well in high school and elementary. But what I did have was a lot of common sense, and I had a seventh sense of really understanding kind of where people were at, because I had to have it, because I was exposed to so many dynamics of races and languages and cultures. And so later on in my career, I actually worked at U of M for 20 years, creating projects, and I would work mainly with adults, but my passion was always parent development and youth development. I was a Girl Scout leader in the 80s and certified 1,200 girls in human sexuality in Southwest Detroit. And so I started to really gain a love for young kids. And what I saw in Detroit, because I worked all Detroit and metro area, was that there was a big struggle in our families at home where there was a lot of young people that were getting a lot of love and a lot of good upbringing, but there was also the kids that unfortunately their parents were in the struggle and they were not getting them. There was a lot of abuse and drug use and all that, and that's all over Detroit. So I really put some education behind it and went into almost social work, got my organizing degree and had to figure out how do I manage that without being, how do I create something, and I had to start small. And so I created a youth council, actually 12 years ago now, and I started with 15 kids and said, I'm gonna do this wraparound, approach. And my objective was to create the future leaders for Southwest Detroit, because there was no Latino representation anywhere, whether it was city council, school board or anything. And that was the objective. We are in year 12, and I am proud to say, and it was a small number, because I think sometimes we tend to get, it's all about numbers, like Donna said. You know, we have people that use our freaking kids. You know, I want to say another word besides freaking, but, you know, they use our kids for numbers. And that has been my experience of watching that happening in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, where, you know, I call them ghost projects, where people used to have like all these numbers of kids, and the programs weren't really, there were 2, 3 kids, and they were the same kids. They were the golden kids, right? And so what I really did was just focus and streamline 15 kids a year, put them through an intense leadership program with partnership at University of Michigan, and that grew. At about mid-level, the objective was no longer create our future politicians. The objective was get them into college and out of college. And so very intentional. So that's kind of how I started to really do the intentionality of grooming leaders to kind of make sure that we were lined up for the future, to have young representation with voice and resources and education. Simultaneously, I worked with organizations like Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation, UNI, Sarah Metro, that took all the other kids that came to us that didn't fit this criteria, because, you know, you don't just throw away kids. You know, if they come to you, you gotta place them, you gotta figure it out. So I was fortunate to have these other agencies that complemented what I was doing. But it's about being intentional. It's about really being effective. And I'm proud to say I have alumni all over. They're at Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, U of M, MSU, Wayne State, and they're coming out right now as immigration lawyers, architects, engineers, and they're all coming back to Detroit. And so, you know, it works. You have to be strategic. You gotta continue evolving. You gotta keep going. I'm always on the streets. Like, if you know me, I don't have a problem sweeping the street, cleaning the toilet, you know, but I'm also in Washington, D.C. meeting with, you know, the president. I mean, I'm a chameleon, and I learned that from growing up in Detroit, growing up in Southwest Detroit, how to be that chameleon, you know, and it really helps. I am so proud of our young people, because they are the ones that have showed me resilience, commitment, like Alondra, you know, like she's in the 3rd year at MSU, and I can't believe it. And she's on all these, she's creating Latino clubs and things like that. That's what it's all about, is making sure that our kids know that they're loved, you know, that there's adults out there that really care, you know, and having, like, you know, arteries to this heart. You know, you can be the heart, but you also gotta make sure that you have the arteries. So if you can't help them, that you figure out where to align them so that they can get that love from other agencies and not be threatened, you know, not be threatened. It's not about my agency, it's about the kids. I think a lot of times people want to hold on to something because it's my numbers, it's my kid, this is my golden child. You know, no, I breed them so they can go out and they can have the tools, the resilience, the resources to sit at other tables and represent for Detroit. It's all about Detroit. So,
Alondra, I want to come to you. And everybody, thank you so much for joining this session. If you have questions or anything that you want to add to the discussion, you could either post them in the chat or unmute yourself and become a part of the discussion. Alondra, I want to talk to you about just your leadership trajectory and where you think it's taking you, and how do you manage perhaps, you know, a difference in philosophy with a mentor or someone who's been in the space longer than you.
Yeah, actually there's, as Maria was talking, there was some stuff I wanted to like mention or like touch base on. So I'll do that first and then I'll move on to that question. So as a young person who honestly, technically, I'm like a young adult right now, not really like a youth. I think when Maria says like some organizations tokenize young people, that is so real, and young people know when they're being tokenized. And I remember when I was in high school, like I had a lot of organizations reach out to me to do work with them. And I don't even put them on my resume anymore because those organizations didn't really help me. I think when I was at 482 Forward and COC, like it was actually youth driven work. It wasn't like someone put this agenda together and gave me a role. I was actually a part of the planning. And I think that's what young people need to do. They need to be part of these initiatives, but like really be there at the table. And as adults, like, and even now, because I'm back in my organizations like 482 Forward, when I'm in the space, it's like, wait, what do the young people have to say? Like, they can be in the room, but if you're not going to give them space to talk, then why have them there? And that's something that I'm just all about, like making sure that young people, their voices are being heard and that we're advocating for them and listening to them. Because a lot of times we have young people talk, but then we don't add any of their ideas. And I've heard a lot of young people, like, that's very frustrating. Like, you have them sit in at a meeting and it's like, okay, well, I talked, but like nothing's there. Like, everything I said wasn't incorporated. So like, I don't want to come to any more meetings. So I think if you're going to work with young people, just make sure that you're listening and yeah, just listening to them. But what was your question? I'm sorry, I just like ramble, but I just really wanted to mention that.
That was actually really good. So my question was around the leadership training that you received and are receiving, and where do you think that's going to take you? Where do you think you're going to end up? And how do you manage, a difference in philosophy and tactic with organizers who are older than you while trying to achieve, a common goal?
So since I started at a really young age, I feel like I really just like love this work. It's more like of a lifestyle at this point. Like, there's just, I don't know, I just love building community with others. So anything that I do, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like, I tell this to everyone, like, I'm really flexible when it comes to my community. Like, I will serve wherever I'm needed. But I think it's really important to understand older leaders or leaders who have been in the community for a longer time. And that's something that me and Maria have a lot of conversations about, because sometimes young people go away for college and they come back, and there's like this idea that you have to come back and educate others. And the way that comes about is just like sometimes rude, disrespectful. But there was something that I recently learned that I also want to share. When we say educating others, it comes off kind of like there's a lack of knowledge. So instead, when you're gonna educate someone, use the term inform, so that there's like that level of respect. Like, I'm informing you on something. That's something I've learned from a young person, so from someone younger than me. But yeah, I think I just really, as someone who's like 20, is like listening to young people, but also making sure there's still that respect for older people who are like still learning, because I think we never stop learning. But we also have to understand and remember that like everything is different. Like, even myself, I can't compare my life when I was in high school to high schoolers now, because the world is completely different right now. So just understanding how to respect other people's stories and where they're coming from when they're doing their work.
Love it. Go ahead, Donna. You're on mute. Donna. Unmute yourself.
I'm sorry about that. If I could comment on that, I think that, we have a lot of young people who did not grow up with role models like Maria, who did not come from households where they were given respect, and didn't go to schools where they were given respect. And they come back to the community with somewhat of a chip on their shoulder. And that's okay with me. They earned that chip. And I think that we can't always expect them to come in with a certain mindset. I think that sometimes you have to build that trust with them and not just assume that you have earned that trust, And I don't think anybody goes into this. Most people don't go into this with bad intentions, but you've been doing this work for a long time. You've been in the field, you've made sacrifices. You think you know, and you don't even notice, because like when you get to your like 50s, you're not really sure that you're 50. You just are. That's a number, but you don't necessarily feel like you're 50. It feels like it was yesterday when you were the one out there in the streets doing these things. I'm not speaking for Maria. I'm speaking for myself. But I think sometimes, you're not conscious of where you are and how much you've changed and where you've traveled to. So I think I don't demand a lot of deference. I I mean, basic respect, certainly, but not deferential respect, because I think that that's the kind of thing that is cultural, that's based on your people's experiences. And we do need navigators. We do need communicators like yourself, Alondra, to sort of be that interpreter and help explain back and forth. And that's such an essential role in that process. But we've got to not make that mandatory for young people to be heard, because we have a lot of young people who are out there in the streets who just feel like, first of all, they've been in the streets, they've been marching for 150 days, they've been putting their bodies on the line, getting lectured from young people about how they don't know how to do things like we did it in the 1960s, like we saw racism in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. It's like, wait a minute. I grew up in a household where people, these young people, a lot of them were the children of the housing recession of 2008 and 2009. They watched government fail. They're spending so much on their college tuition. A lot of young people are dealing with the type of mass incarceration that really did not exist when I was a child. Okay, we had our police issues, but I see police officers, they flirt a little bit, but they were not really scary. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we don't even understand what life is like for young people. You don't have it hard. I had it so hard. As if, when the peak of Black people graduating from college was something like 1979. And then our government started to withdraw resources. Our prison populations peaked when I was a young adult before I had children. So I think that part of it is listening, part of it is really trying to understand. And the other thing is young people aren't going to do things like we do. Like, okay, people demonize social media. Social media is so terrible. Well, when I was growing up, my grandmother demonized television. And when she was growing up, they were talking about the radio. Sometime in the past, somebody was trying to stop us, my ancestors, from reading books because books were whatever. We have to be careful not to demonize how young people communicate and who they are and how they show up in spaces. So if social media is a tool, it's incumbent upon us to learn how to communicate on that tool if we want to be able to communicate with young people. And if we don't, get out the way so somebody can. I used to have this program, it was really exciting for me, where we had, I used to make young people bring their favorite songs. And okay, just a quick reminder, the session runs until 6, okay. We used to have my favorite songs. I'd have young people, I had a youth group too, Maria. Charlonda and I had this youth group together when I was at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And on Saturdays, we'd meet, we have these young people come. And I said, bring me your favorite songs. And I listened to them and they were like horrible, right? I was like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. These words, what are you talking about? First of all, I didn't even understand what they were saying. And secondly, some of it was offensive. But rather than attack it, I said, explain what this song means to you. Why do you listen to this? Explain to me so I could try to understand their music. And then I bring them my music. And I make them listen to that. And then when I was at Vanguard, we had this play that we produced that was produced by Dorothea Sharon, who was the scriptwriter, called I Want My Music Now, where we talked about the conflict between different generations based on music. And it was really, really powerful. It was sold out. Somehow we didn't videotape it. So I can only tell you it was really great. But it was music is a means of really trying to understand people, I think is really important. And also just making sure that you understand how life looks through them. We can't make assumptions.
Donna, that's so good. You said so many things that I could follow up on. Oh man. So I want to ask why. So all of you sort of alluded to being able to listen, being able to, sort of restrain, critique, and, learn and, show love first. Why is that so hard? Why isn't more, Madhavi, why isn't more of it happening, right? I think right now, we're seeing, a generational gap right now around this argument. And this came up again yesterday too, around the defund the police verbiage and movement, right? And that sort of progressive demand, I wouldn't even call it a slogan, that progressive demand isn't palatable. We want our young people to affect change, but we want them to do it in a palatable way. Is that possible? Can we do it that way?
asked me like 100 questions in one question, Orlando. Let me start with, I think, can we do it? Yes. And I think that, you know, all of this work requires all of the tactics and the strategies like at the same time and some way to make them all work together. And, you know, when I hear and listen sort of people talk about why they don't believe or agree with the like tactic or the strategy, the policy demands all around like defunding the police. I hear a lot of people that are sort of scared about, you know, the riskiness of putting your literal body on the line when we know that that can end very, very badly. People who have sort of experienced that kind of like violence and protest, I think that's in there a little bit. There's, I think, a lot of socialization. You talk to people all over the world about movements and protests and all this political stuff happening all over the world that people, socialization runs really deep. Oh, thank you, Rumi, for reading my mind. Socialization really does run deep, where people are really practically brainwashed into like a behave. That's the way you keep yourself safe. That's the way you don't get hurt. That's the way you get what you want. So I think there's a lot of unlearning to do, and that sometimes, you know, there's so much media that you can consume it in millions of different ways, and each outlet is telling you something sort of different. And so it's really hard to even understand what the idea of defund the police is, because sure, some people mean let's take away all the money and get rid of the police. Some people are abolitionists. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I'm just saying that there has to be, it's hard for people to understand, and they make a lot of assumptions. And that I think it just goes also, again, that people were told that you just can't do that. That doesn't work. You have to create change only from the inside. There's just a lot of people who sort of feel that way and react in a very visceral way. Like, oh, I hear something and it makes me feel a certain way, and maybe don't examine, like, what are you feeling? But reacting out loud before really understanding what you're even reacting to. That's a bit of a rambling answer, but I think there's lots and lots of reasons, I think, why people why there's some you know, and some of it is generational and some of it is not. I mean, I think, you know, the other thing is particularly things like defund the police. There are people within generations who have different different opinions. So it's not only a generational thing, it's sort of bigger than that.
Yeah, but I do think, you know, in addition to the defund the police thing, that there is a bit of a growing resentment on part of young people for those who came before us, because you sort of get this picture of me being active and actually doing stuff, and the older person off in the sidelines, not doing anything but telling me what I'm doing wrong, right? Not telling me that's wrong, that slogan is not going to help anywhere, but it's like, yo, well, come out here with me. You know what I'm saying? And I think that disconnect is real for a lot of young people. And I'll speak for myself, especially when you have young people who are hungry for older mentors, right? Who didn't get the mentorship that they longed for and wanted. Only when you became loud, or only when other folks begin to add value to your work and your name, where those same older folks begin to come around, and young people sort of resent that. How do we break down that communication barrier of somebody older being on the sidelines dictating to us, you're doing this wrong, do it that way. No, that's not going to work. Donna, you have any thoughts on that?
I think that we have to be honest. 1960s, we were fighting for good Black people to get good jobs and into college. We were fighting for respectable folks. NAACP has largely been enlisting that work for a long time. People, you know, marched in suits, and, you know, Martin Luther King was killed wearing a suit, and so was Malcolm X. And we thought that suits were the armor that we needed to prove ourselves to people. When my hero, Rosa Parks, you know, started the Boys Bus Boycott, Claudette Colvin had gone before her, but did not meet the standard of what somebody who was really oppressed would be. And so I think that we have a generation of people that is really fighting not just for respectable people, but saying we're fighting for Black lives. Black lives matter. Black lives matter whether you're poor or rich. Black lives matter whether you're wearing a hoodie or a suit. Black lives matter whether you're gray or straight. Black lives matter whether you went to college or you didn't. And that is a real challenge to people my age who were sort of raised to believe that good Black lives mattered, okay? And if you want it to matter, you better be good. And nobody really put that out right, kind of, but it's kind of there. You see it with the issue with the young ladies who were twerking and the restaurant owner was cussing them out. And people my age were like, oh, I don't blame him. I would have cussed them out too. And I'm like, you know, really? And then somebody actually referred to those young women as roaches, right? And yeah, I was like, I almost threw up. I was so upset by that. But I think that we have to really realize that. Who is being oppressed by police right now? Who's most at risk for being beaten right now? It's going to be a younger Black man. Is most at risk of being pulled over, most at risk of being harassed. We have people who have been in and out of the system for things they don't control. And we have a criminal justice system that is horrendous, where there's no criminal defense. And if you get accused of something, you're likely going to plead guilty because you can't afford to defend yourself. And even the Michigan Supreme Court has said that it's problematic. So for me, who never faces that risk, who doesn't worry about false charges, having somebody plant evidence, being beat up and having somebody just jumps out squad, come and get me. It's very easy for me to say, oh, don't say defund the police. We need the police. The police will keep you safe. Because for me, I might even think of the police as an entity that will keep me safe. And I probably did until 3 or 4 years ago, when I thought somebody was breaking in my house in the middle of the night because they kept ringing the doorbell and I had somebody who had been harassing me. And so I got scared and I called the police. And when they got there, I looked out and to my horror realized it was my daughter's friend. And I watched the police beat him in my driveway with no provocation. They wouldn't stop when I said I knew him. They wouldn't stop when I apologized. And I realized that I would have been part of the problem, sicking the police. So when it happened, I finally got a supervisor to come and he pulled them off of him. And this young man wasn't arrested. And he came into my house and I was, you know, humiliated, terrified, ashamed. How could I have done that to you? And he said, oh, that's all right, Miss Donna. This happens to me all the time. So defund the police for him is a much different command. He's not talking about just take some of their money away. He's saying the police are problematic at their core. And everybody may not believe that, but I think the problem is that we use our own lived experiences and our own relationships with the police. And those of us who have good jobs and make good money and live in comfortable, safe communities don't understand what it's like to be a person who is on the other side.
Yeah, say that. Mm.
Can I say something?
Yes, please, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Donna, for that. I have a son that's 20, and I have 3 adult children, and I'm constantly learning how to communicate with them. You know, they was my babies now. They in college and everything. Go Wayne State. And I thought about what Donna was saying. Before my son goes out, I have to tell them, they don't know you go to college. They just see a Black man with a hoodie, and we have to constantly tell him, just take off your hoodie, and if you stop, you know, put your hands, don't reach for a wallet, because there's probable cause to say you was reaching for something. And my son shouldn't have to go through this when he's driving, if he decide to put his hood on or not. You know, he's never been stopped, but we have to give him these rules, especially if he out past 12, you know, just make sure you got your license. And we should have to give him those rules before he's 20 years old, about to be 21. And he's always faced with, you know, back then we wouldn't be able to say nothing, but what's wrong with a child asking the police, why am I stopped? They don't even want you to say that, you know, and some of them know the law now, you know, and that's why we have all this confrontation, because they know their rights and stuff like that. So I'm learning how to communicate with I got an 18, 22, and a 20-year-old. So I'm just learning how to communicate, for my generation, because I was raised up in the 60s, certain stuff you didn't do, but they're more bolder these days. Which I
Yeah.
applaud them, but I have to tell them when to, chime in what you want to say and when to, kind of step back a little bit for your safety. But, I applaud them, to stand up for their rights. Because my daughter, she did go to the protest, and I was kind of scared of that, which I wouldn't have did, but I congratulate her on doing that. And she met a lot of people that gave her the rules and regulation, the quiet protests, bring this and bring this in case they pepper spray you. Because she was just and then we had to stop to pray with her because I didn't know what was going to happen. But I got an 18-year-old daughter. We told her, you might not go because I don't know what she would have did. She's more radical, but it's just like, I'm glad the old one went, but the younger one, I told her no, because she might have been the one that probably threw a water bottle. It's the difference in their personalities. But I'm still learning how to, communicate, to really hear them, because they're not my babies anymore. So I'm learning that communication. I enjoyed everything I heard so far.
Thank you, Ms. Arlene. I want to allow the panelists the opportunity to respond to what Ms. Arlene said, but I do want to just bring in some of the comments in the chat. I see there's a little bit of fire in the chat about socialization being, a big thing when it's pushed into thought and behavior, and it's hard to unlearn it. There is a fear of law enforcement, I assume, especially by undocumented folks who want to be more under the radar. Rumi, they say that vulnerability is super understandable for sure. It makes me wonder what can be done to really build that sense of communal safety where more imagination is encouraged. And they also made a point about, respectability. And I think we were seeing a lot of respectability politics sort of play out. But I really want to get to what Miss Arlene was saying and sort of wrap it into what Donna was saying. I think Donna, in especially the beginning of what you were saying, I think that people are fighting for the movement of yesterday and what was, and it's a different movement. But there's also something to be said around the conversations that have to take place at home with young adults and their parents, and how especially Black and brown young people show up in community, literally, and I mean that in a literal way, in how you dress and what you wear and how you walk and how you discourse with authority. So any of the panelists want to respond to what Miss Arlene just share it with us?
Yeah. So, I've dealt with it my whole life, attitude. I was one of those, I still have attitude. If you know me, I don't have a problem saying fuck. And you know that I'm gonna say that, and Donna knows it, and all my colleagues know. I don't give a shit if the mayor's there, whatever. They know who I am, because it's just, I'm at a point in my life, and I'm privileged, I'm blessed that I can say that without getting fired. So I think that one of the things that I heard, so I want to give a little story about what happened more recently to me through this movement of Black Lives Matter. I went to a rally, and it was on Burner, and all the young people, they came out, and it was a beautiful day. A lot of music. It started at Patton Park, and it ended up at Clark Park. Unfortunately, and it was interesting because I was like, like my husband said, what were you doing there? And I was like, okay, I needed to be there, but I learned something. I didn't need to be there. But how do we create a culture or understanding that with young people that I'm still there, even though I'm not there in presence? And I'm gonna tell you why, because it was really hard for me. I got caught up in the moment, and I know some of my colleagues were like, damn, Maria, you're really saying this? And I'm gonna say it, They were like chanting, fuck the cops, fuck the cops. I mean, there's like 300 people or 500 people. I don't even know how much it was. It was a lot of people, a lot of young people. And I kind of caught myself in that moment, and I was part of it. And then I thought, shit, what? TV cameras are there. you know, and I'm like, man, do I really need to be there? You know, you know, I run an organization, I do national work, but I was there and I got caught up in the moment. Long story short, it ended up at Clark Park and it got late. Young kids started walking back and then there was an altercation with the police officers, right? And I was right in the middle of it. And the reason I was in the middle of it, because I wanted to make sure some of my young people that were walking back to their cars made it back. And I was giving some people rides. I got caught right in the middle of a big altercation where there was, you know, young people broke the windows of the officers' cars, right? And I mean, it was like, I was right there. I had to make a decision, you know, what I was gonna do. And I had to, you know, use my influence of some of the police officers to get me out of there. And so I had a reflection on that moment as I was driving home, and I come home and it's all over the news, right? My husband's like, well, you know, this where you were at all day and this and that. It was peaceful until that night, at night. How do I get to a point where I don't need to be there because I have my Alondras and Yvonne was there. She, you know, I have my chingonas, I have my young people to be there. But how do I be part of creating an ambiance that people know that even though I'm not there, I'm there? You know, that I am there, that I'm working on policies and I'm working on ordinances and that, you know, just like Donna, we're on so many meetings that we're changing, you know, you know, the institutional stuff, the system. We're not just working on the conditions, we're working on the systems, right? And that's where I'm at, is how do we move forward? And how do we, like people like myself, I'm 60 years old, I didn't need to be there, you know? But how do I let those young people know that I'm there in spirit, that I'm there, you know, that people like myself and Donna, that we're there, that, you know, and that's where I'm at, is I have to recalculate, you know, how do we create this new ambiance or in this era right now to let young people know that we got their back, you know, but we also have to think about, you know, like our roles and the detriment of what could have happened, you know, in our positions and, you know, our movement that we're doing that a lot of young people don't know, and not jeopardize that. So I think we're really in a very unique predicament right now, that we need to come together and figure this out. We need to let young people listen to young people, and what is it? How do we create that ambiance that they know that they got adult allies that have their back and are actually addressing the bigger systematic institutional racism bullshit that we sit at, and Donna knows, we're on Zooms all the time, you know, city and state, you know, but they don't know that, you know, so that's my story. I didn't go to jail, thank God, but it was really interesting to me to say, how do I not be there, but yet they know we're there as elders.
Amanda Holiday is, Donna, go ahead. Okay, Amanda Holiday is pushing back a little bit on you, Maria, and asking why you don't need to be there. Why you feel like you don't need to be there?
You know, unfortunately, I work in a platform. I work in it's still playing the fucking game, you know, and whether you want to call it or not, I'm gonna put it out there. And so I have a lot of colleagues, and I have funders. I have, you know, there's things that I have to think about that are bigger. They're bigger, you know, and your funder doesn't want to see you on the news getting handcuffed, you know, or there's things that I have to think about. My agency, I have to think about all the people that I have working for me. I'm responsible for a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't understand, that I am the face right now. Plus there's other faces, but it is important. It is important to be strategic and smart at this time, you know, Maybe when I retire, it'll be different. But right now, I'm humble enough to say, that we don't have the luxury in our area of work, of responsibility, because we hold a lot on our shoulders as directors and people that are not just we're doing ordinance and policy change and law changes. We're doing things that if we get cut out, then that's a big loss.
Well, you know what?
Can I?
Go ahead, Donna.
I just think everybody has a different role. Everybody doesn't have the same role. I think we can all work on a similar thing, but we have different roles to play in the thing. So I fight back with my tongue, with my pen, with Authentically Detroit. And I think that is me being there, right? It's not necessarily for me to be there in the same way. Everybody's not going to be there in the same way. There was a time when Orlando and I were interviewing Tristan while he was still marching and talking about it. And I'm trying to spread the word, and I'm trying to speak up and defend and protect and acknowledge and all of those things in my way. And that doesn't mean that I'm a leader of this movement. I'm not. Somebody else is leading the movement. But how do I support those people who are leading the movement and not sit on the sidelines? Because I think that not being physically at a march is not the same thing as being on the sidelines. I didn't go for a whole lot of reasons. It's COVID-19 outbreak, okay? And my husband has diabetes, and I wish I would put myself in contact with people and risk his life. I'm not doing it, right? So for me, that was a no-brainer. For people who went there, I was, busy defending them and speaking about that. I was a person who was putting out there something that I heard. I was one posting a letter from a Birmingham jail when Martin Luther King was posting and talking about was treated like an outside agitator in Birmingham because that's not where he was from. So I think that we have to acknowledge it takes the inside game, it takes the outside game, it takes the interpreter game that Alondra plays to try to help connect people, that Orlando plays to try to help connect people. We have a number of people who are in that interpretive role who really bring people together. Now, I'm going to say this, Orlando is one of the most easygoing, nice people that you meet on the outside, okay? I've never seen Orlando cuss anybody out. I'm much more likely to cuss somebody else in Orlando, right? Because Orlando has that smile. What did he say? He called himself a joy instigator. And I'm not quite a joy instigator. That's not really my thing. There's room for a joy instigator in a movement, and there's room for an intense person who's going to call people out in a movement. It's about mutual respect. So going back to your question, Maria, about how you let people know you're there, I think one of the things we have to figure out is how to resource the people who are there.
Yes.
If we help them get the tools and the resources they need, they're not asking for us to show up and take charge. They don't want us on the front lines. I truly believe nobody was saying, where's Donna, okay? But if I can send them some money or give them some praise or hook them up, then I'm adding value to what they do. And what I really hope we do is we use our leadership, we use our access to people who are in policy roles to help bring messages from the people who are on the front lines so that we give them voice in places that they would not normally appear.
Oh, I love it. I love it. How do you resource what's happening on the ground, the movement that's being stewarded by so many young people? And I think that is a phenomenal entry point to showing support and showing love. One of the things that I experienced as a young person that I even resent to this day is when someone tried to apply discipline and critique to me without first showing me that they love me or they care about what I'm doing in my career, personal life, what have you, right? Donna and I spent her first year at ECN in 2016 building that relationship, right? She was my boss, so she could always critique me and tell me what to do. But Donna was, I want to praise Donna for a minute, because this is what it was supposed to be too, like this back and forth between mentors and mentee. Donna allowed the space for conversation. She allowed space for questions. And she allowed space for disagreement, right? I'm like, I don't know, we should be doing that, or should we be doing it, this way? And we figured out we figured out how to hear each other, listen to each other, and honor each other's expertise and experience. And so when it was time, once we figured that out, everything else, you know, she'll put me on this and she can put me on that and give me the resources, as she said, because she's not just talking about it, she does it. Give me the resources that I needed to be successful on any project or any initiative that she put me on, right? And so I think that this is the kind of discourse and this is the kind of strategy that needs to make its way to mainstream. But my question is, Madhavi, you work for an organization that has an entire policy arm, when folks are in the thick of it, right? When folks are hitting the streets, when folks are putting their lives on the line, how do we make room and time for strategy, right? Because we're talking about, you know, making sure that you're resourced and making sure that, you know, people know that Maria is there, but Maria's going to be talking to the funder, but we don't know, like, where are the communication channels? Where is the time for strategy? And how do we respect everybody's roles in the work?
First, I think that people who are, you know, marching in the streets have plenty of strategy, and it would behoove us to, I know that's not what you were saying. I would just like to say that for the record, that there is strategy in the marches and the 200 days of all of this going on. And I think, you know, it's really nice to be able to have this conversation in this kind of like public forum, but I think there's the quiet work you do every day. You know, we at CDAD do have a public policy agenda. It is developed by our members. What we're doing, you know, is trying to make sure we have a different recruitment strategy for members, because a lot of things don't show up on our policy agenda that perhaps us as staff feel like it should be there. And then we make an examination of sort of like, well, who is actually contributing to this policy agenda? So that's one example of something a little bit quiet. And then we have a lot of conversations with people who are, you know, organizers and activists, and trying to make the bridge between community development and, you know, organizing work, which is how we sort of got here today at this point, in acknowledgement that as a field, we have a little bit of a way to go to bridge some of those, build some of those relationships. So we make sure we work in coalition with other people's work. We don't assume that we need to like lead everything. So there's a lot of spaces that we're in coalitions where some of that work you talked about, the strategy, the figuring out whose roles, who's, you know, insider, outsider strategy, that work, you know, happens quietly sometimes. And maybe it's a little too quiet, but I think very practically speaking, that's sort of how that happens. So we have a lot of relationships, just like everyone on in this meeting has a lot of relationships with a lot of people, and we have sort of quiet conversations about, okay, what are you going to handle? What do you need me to do? What do you need this person to do? You need us to bring, who do you need to bring into the space? So there's a lot of like maneuvering, like playing chess, that is just not very visible.
Alondra, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I'm just like, my camera's just off right now.
No. I wanted to bring you in on this question of strategy, especially along the kind of organizing and work that you do. How are you strategizing across generations, or is that taking place, or is that something you guys still are figuring out?
I think it just, I don't know, I feel like it kind of just depends, like what kind of, it's because I feel like I can't really talk for like all young people, but I think like for me, a strategy that I like to use with this work, and I think it's something important, is just communicating and having that trust and holding people accountable. Like I feel like even if Maria is not there, like I trust that she's doing something to like help the movement. And I know that like even if she doesn't show up to a place, like she said, like she's doing more, she's doing like policy and stuff like that. So you're supposed to have that trust, and know that like your, or like my organizing won't look the same as like everybody else's organizing, and that's okay. But I think a lot of times, and this is something that I'm very, this is something that I've learned through Forward to Forward, is that organizing and activism looks different for every single person. Some people some people, they want to be the person giving a speech. It looks different for everyone. And I think that's something that we just need to talk about more as organizers, as leaders, knowing that everyone's work looks different, but it's still important and still valuable. I know I didn't really touch on your question, but I just really wanted to bring that up.
No, I appreciate that. We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to get a couple things accomplished. And I want to talk a little bit about social media, particularly the power, the organizing power of Black Twitter, number one, and the polarization of everything. Like everything is extreme. So I want to touch on that, and then I want us to get a little business out of the way around who will be the designated reporter outer for our session. Donna, you and I on the podcast a couple of weeks ago sort of started a conversation about social media organizing and the power of Black Twitter, and how young people have created, that phenomenon. How do you see those tools be integrated in what's happening on the ground?
I don't think we would have a Black Lives Matter movement without Black Twitter, to be honest with you. I don't think social media would have, there's a new show on Netflix that talks about how social media has destroyed people's lives, and these people who programmed it now think that they control everything that people in America do. But what I really saw was empowerment among some people, some young people who had facts on their side and were able to push back. I remember when Ferguson was happening, and my daughter was living in DC at that time, or actually when Freddie Gray in Baltimore, and she was on the streets videotaping, and when she would come home, she just watched hours and hours of videotapes of what was happening on the ground. And so what was in the news media was one thing, but what young people were looking at was another. And that's where I think, which helped birth the movement and the resistance to what is. And so I think that we have to understand that is where a lot of people get their information. That's where they get their news. News is a lot of times released first on Twitter, and then you can get it on Facebook and in other places. And on the so I think harnessing that means that we've got to be cognizant of what people are thinking and saying and doing in our community. And I don't see how you can do that without monitoring what's happening on Twitter. It also means that we have to be familiar with language and how people are communicating. And we used to want everybody to come to meetings back in the day before COVID. Remember COVID, pre-COVID, we'd have meetings once a month, and we'd serve delicious dinners, and we'd have a bunch of 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds show up. And, we have an agenda, and then we talk about why these young people just don't care about the community. I mean, I never said that, but that people did. How do you get these young people to care? They don't even care. Like, who doesn't care about their own life, right? Just because they're not showing up at your meeting does not mean they don't care. And another thing is that, a lot of times when you're a young parent, I remember when I was a young parent, I was at soccer practice, and I was at parent-teacher conferences, and I was monitoring homework, and I was getting off of work, and I was so tired I wasn't going to anybody's meeting, sometimes not even my own, okay? Meetings were horrible for me because I owed it to my kid to be their mother. So when I'm home, I've got to give myself to you. I can't share you with a community issue. So I think the way that we show up as parents, the younger generation is very different. And so we have expectations that are sort of centered around us. And I think that rather than expecting young people to become like us, we should let young people communicate where they are. If they're messaging that we want out there, then we need to try to find some Twitter influencers to share that messaging so that it gets spread to other people. And, we did this one thing, our organization, we had a staff person who unfortunately is leaving tomorrow, but he had this concept, Black is king, and Black is queen. And he wanted to do that to try to get young women to come and talk about something. I was like, what the hell is that? I mean, it's cool, it's a beautiful thing, but why would anybody come to Black is queen? I didn't even get why that was going to be appealing, because there was no subject matter, there was no topic, there was no clarification of what the meeting outcomes were. Why would people come? So I decided I was going to go just because I wanted to show support. And I show up and all of these young women are there. I'm like, what the hell is happening? Why are they here? I don't even know what attracted them. And then the meeting started out and they were talking about self-care. I mean, who does that, right? Chandra introduced me to remember we did self-care. Maria is the one who's always been a proponent of self-care, but I'm like, self-care is like a luxury. Who has time for that when you got problems to solve? They started out and they're like in self-care, and they moved from self-care to talking about relationships, and they ended up going from relationships to talking about politics, and then they started talking about what we need to do, and it was all one Black as Queen conversation. And you know, and that occurred to me that I have no idea what's attractive to young women, because I would not have showed up, but they did, right? I did it for the job. I was kind of paid to be there, but they were just there on their own, and they were able to drive their own really meaningful conversations. I was taking notes like, oh, so this is how you resolve problems. You know, I was learning from them. And I think that that's the one thing I want to make sure I remember to say is that I'm blessed to have 3 millennial children. And I have to, one of them might be Gen Z on the cusp. 4, okay, Orlando, I love you too. But I'm so blessed to be able to learn from my millennials. I'm blessed to have them pour into me and help me understand how they think. So I don't know, I think that that's the power of social media is, number one, to acknowledge it as something of value and to quit demeaning it and treating it like it's some horrible thing. And 2, to tap into what young people have created for themselves so that we can expand things.
Yeah, and I think, you know, on the revolutionary love tip and on the intergenerational discourse tip, I think that's part of the reason why Donna and I created Authentically Detroit, to showcase that you can have a male and a female from 2 totally different generations meet and have dialogue, right? And offer perspective that is validated and respected on both ends. One of the things that, you know, I had a really contentious moment with an elder in the community, because she wanted to, and I don't think she knew she was doing it purposefully, she wanted to invalidate my Detroit experience because it was different from hers, right? The Detroit that she grew up in the 60s and in the late 50s is a Detroit that's drastically different from the Detroit that I grew up in the 1990s, early 2000s. It doesn't make any one experience invalid, right? It just makes the experience different. And so I think we have a way, I think we have to unlearn this notion or this instinct to want to fight for the communities that we grew up in exactly, right? And to only honor experience from that era exactly. Because the Detroit I grew up in is different from the Detroit that young folks are growing up in now. And so what you witness on Authentically Detroit is just a validation of perspective and difference and experience. And it's a beautiful thing. And of course we have a ton of guests every week. Sorry for the shameless plug, but what we want to do is designate.
So I want to respond to that. So
yeah.
I just want to, it would be not me if I didn't enlighten, I think, the difference of my growing up in Southwest Detroit versus the whole city of Detroit.
Come on, come with it.
And you know, just the mentalities, the cultures, the different languages. And it's not just Latinos, it's, you know, we have Muslim, we have Italians, Polish, and Irish, and so many generations of different cultures and languages and races and mindsets, people that come from all over the world, and they land in this community. And I think that that's something that I just needed to talk to, just uplift. And, you know, it's really important that we figure out how do we showcase that, because I think we have not been good on really making the rest of the city understand, you know, that there is a difference, and it's okay. You know, I'm like here to say it's okay. You know, you know, a lot of our people are under the radar for many reasons, and it's okay. You know, and so I just I felt the need to say that as we are creating this intergenerational, hopefully new era of really effectiveness, and how do we do that, that it's going to be different in the community that I service, the population, because we have to have different methods and resources and things like that, because we have different populations. But I'm really proud that CDAD is starting to do a youth council. And that's part of all this, building the engine, which will be under CDAD. I think that's really great. I think we're onto something. So let's build from this, and let's make something happen that's good for now, for this era, that will be effective.
Thank you, Maria. I know we have like 2 minutes, so very quickly, that youth council is a citywide youth council that'll help us sort of build some intergenerational work. It'll be led by young people from across the country. I don't have very many details because it doesn't exist and they haven't built it yet, but that is the that is the strategy and the whole idea. So thank you.
I love it. Anybody want to be the designated reporter outer to the larger plenary when we go back around some big themes and conversations we had? This was a really robust and rich conversation. So anybody want to volunteer themselves to do that?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, we got, yes, we got Maria.
And I don't ever volunteer anymore because I'm too old. I've been doing this forever. But I want to give Donna a break, because Donna usually, I was getting ready to say Donna because that's my girl. She's really good at this, but I want to give her a break.
Cool, Maria. So, all right, so you're designated, and then if you need me to fill in.
Absolutely, please chime in, people. Donna, please, and Alondra and Orlando.
Yeah. Thank y'all for joining our group. We hope you were blessed by the discussion. Everybody have a good time.
Woo!
Thank you, Orlando.
Orlando.
Yes.
Can we stay in here a minute before we go back to Maine? I just have a quick question.
Sure, go for it.
So since we're taking out the breakout, I mean the break, are we just gonna go straight to like having people call out like what they?
Yeah, so the break, we took out the break. So everyone will sort of report out from their various breakout groups.
Okay, and then I'll just name off, like, you know how there was like a slide where I'm gonna name off everyone who presented?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure before we got in the big room, because I didn't really understand Maggie's message.
Yeah, I got you, and I'll help you out.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks y'all. See y'all in the other room.
Orlando, Rich, we'll see you there in a sec. Thanks, Donna. Good work.
Oh, thank you. Let's see, how do we get out of here? Oh, leave breakout room.
Leave breakout room, yeah.
Ready to move on to discussing all of the things that we talked about in our sessions.
What up? I see Savannah Brewer in the audience. What up, Savannah Brewer? What up, Doe? Seeing some good people. Hey, Miss Pat Dockery. Hey. Kenyatta Campbell is in the building. Hey, y'all. Shout out to Kenyatta Campbell, Cody Rouge in the house.
What up, Doe?
What up, Doe? I saw you all on Facebook today with your consultation. You go, girl.
Shouting out like we at a real party, for real, for real.
Hey, you know, that's how we do. You know what I'm saying? We want people to have a good time. I
Hey,
see.
Kenyatta.
Huh?
I was saying, hey, Kenyatta.
Hey, right. Hey, auntie.
How are you?
All right.
Killmonger from Black Panther. We see the new executive director of MAC Development, Antoine Jackson, in the building. What's up, man? Hey there. Oh, man. Good to see y'all. Come on in. Come on back in.
Hey, Orlando, I've been jumping around to the different breakout discussions. Some really, really dynamic conversation.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. I was in one room and it was really powerful.
Yep.
Can't wait to hear about it. So hopefully everybody has their designated reporter outers.
Yeah, I think my sense of it is that the facilitators believe that they're doing the reports out. I could be
Okay,
wrong,
great.
but yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yep.
Camille, we'll wait for you to give us the cue to go ahead and get started once everyone is sort of back.
Okay, I'm looking now and it looks like everyone is back here. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, I think everybody's back in the main room.
All right, Alondra, take it away.
Okay, so we wanted to have a conversation where everyone could just highlight what they heard, comments that were made, or what was talked about within your breakout session. Are we going in a specific order, Orlando, or are we just gonna have
So everybody had session numbers. We had session 1, session 2, session 3. So session 1 through 6, and so we can count them out. But what we want to do is first thank everybody, especially the amazing group of organizations that put on these breakout sessions. We know that it took a lot of prep work to do it. So shout out to 482 Forward, Youth Organizing Collective, Bridging Communities, Inc., the Villages CDC, Office of Council President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield and Council Member Lopez, Detroit Action, U of M, D4, Deep Dive, Detroit, Building Community Value, Detroit Justice Center, Detroit Will Breathe, Detroit Future City, ALPAC, the Coalition for Police Transparency and Accountability, Congress of Communities, ECN and CDAT. All of you did the work to make those discussions as dynamic as they were. We want to thank you. So this is what we're going to do. After we hear report out from each group, we're going to spend some time talking through exactly what we heard. And then in real time, Camille, because she is the Zoom goddess, is going to create a snap poll to help us organize some of the big themes that are coming out of what we are talking about. And I'll ask you all, so make sure that you have your unmute button handy or the chat function ready to go around some of the big themes that you heard in the report outs. So each group has 3 minutes to report out. Don't try me. Don't try me. You got 3 minutes. And we'll get into the larger group discussion. So let's start with group session number 1. What was session number 1?
Mental health during virtual learning.
Let's do it.
Great. So we started off with talking about what 482 Forward is. For those who don't know, 482 Forward is a citywide education organizing network that is based in Detroit. We just talked about what 482 Forward does, how we organize, what platform we use while organizing, which is invest in my health and safety. Invest in my health and safety is referring to investing in our youth and investing in our youth's health and safety in school, in their community, in their neighborhoods. We went over what components of the platform was, such as the things that we do. So like one thing was cops over counselors. We created that to make sure that we're putting, counselors over cops, sorry.
I was about to say, I was like, what?
But we're gonna make sure that we put our counselors, our mental health of our students over funding police in our schools so that we can make sure that our students are getting the best environment and learning that they can. So based off referring to the best environment that they can during school, we based our discussion mostly on how we would reimagine our schools, how we would reimagine mental health in our schools, what we can do to make sure that our students are getting the best education that they can get, And I'll leave it to Amna to talk more about that.
Oh yeah, so definitely. So basically what we talked about was just what investing in schools and investing in the students with the students as a best interest looks like to the students, to the teachers, and to the parents. So what we did was create a Jamboard, and see if you could pull that up.
I can't because someone else is sharing, but I can drop the link and anyone can look at it.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So Lindsay will drop the link to the Jamboard that we created, just asking ourselves what a fully funded school that is focused on the students and in the best interest of the students and teachers looks like to us. Fixing problems whereas students don't have enough supplies compared to when a teacher needs to, you know, take money out of their own pay to buy student supplies. So it's just, we talked about a lot of common issues like that in schools, and I think it was really collaborative, really productive. Yeah, that's basically what we went over.
Thank you. Thank you for that report out. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. Thank you.
We're gonna go to session number 2, policy and politics in the neighborhoods. Who's reporting out from there? Is that Phyllis Edwards?
Of course it is. No,
You
know what? And I neglected to do that little to get that done for someone to report out. But we had a great session, I do believe. We had Councilwoman Lopez join us, and we had Barry from President Pro Temp, Councilman Pro Temp office, Sheffield office to join us as well as Brandon Snyder from the Detroit Action. And we started out talking about how policies influence communities. One such policy, as I mentioned, was the Social Security. People don't think about that a lot anymore until you reach Social Security age. But when that was invented, that of course it was built on injustice, as it didn't allow for agricultural or domestic workers to receive those benefits. So initially from the onset, that was a policy built with inequalities in it. And it wasn't until 1948 and 1950s, respectively, that domestic workers and agricultural workers were able to start receiving those benefits. So as we look at the policies that have come out now as a result of COVID-19, especially those that prior to COVID-19, according to our own mayor, water, for instance, was not a public health issue, and our own mayor said that people stopping the water shutoffs would promote people to not pay their bills. And so now that it is a national health crisis and they've made allowances for people to have water, how does this impact us moving forward? And so with that, Councilwoman Lopez and Barry shared with us the Detroiters Bill of Rights that's being implemented into the charter. And that bill is people's rights to be free from discriminations, right to water, right to safety, right to health, right to environmental health, right to recreation, right to access and have access and mobility, and the right to the basic needs and quality of life. And so getting involved in that effort, and what it took all the advocacy groups that came together, because we're more powerful together than we are separate. And so this is a real true demonstration of that, as all those advocate groups came together to help structure and build this Detroit Bill of Rights that will hopefully be the key to some of the issues that people are afraid of coming out of COVID-19 as the moratoriums and the restrictions become lifted. We certainly have people and families and children and vulnerable seniors who are involved and really concerned about their quality of life. But hopefully this bill will be implemented. It's of course, bills take a while. Not until August of next year, but working towards that is certainly one of the efforts. And we shared a lot of information around how you can get involved with board and commissions. And Councilwoman Lopez also shared the PowerPoint and all of the other data that goes along with the Bill of Rights. And so it was a very fruitful conversation, very touching and productive.
Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. Appreciate it. A lot of great points there. Session number 3, development in the neighborhoods. Who is?
That's me. I'll try to summarize our rich conversation.
Okay,
So,
Trina.
So we had a great panel. We had Lauren Hood, Chase Cantrell, and Sam Butler. And we just started out talking about what is equitable development. And we said it's a combination of an inclusive process as well as outcomes. And Lauren went a bit further and said that she only thinks equitable development is reparations, where the people who've been harmed in the past are the ones who benefit in the future, or in the current, or in the development that's happening. We talked a little bit about the inequities in having market forces determine the value of development, because sometimes it costs more in construction and in labor than the building or the development is worth. And so unless there is some government subsidy or government building the houses like it exists in other countries and other places, it's really hard to actually get some of the things that communities might want, because the capital has to come from somewhere, and it's really a deficit of capital, which makes some projects much more difficult to do. We also talked about this idea of an equity scorecard, somewhat based on what is happening in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And their 5 categories are equitable community engagement, equitable land use, equitable economic development, equitable housing, and equitable transportation. And we had a lot of debate back and forth about if having a scorecard and having a score is really what's important, or having people have the power and have their voices to be heard so that the things they want actually is built into some of these developments. We talked about a lot of other things, but I think I'll stop there, except for one of the things we thought might be useful if we have a scorecard or principles for Detroit equitable development, having a different AMI than the regional AMI, making sure it's 50% or less so Detroiters with the revenues and the income they have can actually afford it, having a way to retain current residents so they aren't displaced, and this idea of maybe also having money go in some sort of a fund that will be of use to local residents, and maybe also for things like home repair so that people aren't forced out of their communities. So I think I'll stop there, but this conversation is not ending. We welcome anyone who's interested in these conversations to continue engaging, because it's gonna be an issue that is gonna continue to be there for years to come.
Thank you, Trina. Love it. Next up is justice and police behavior in the neighborhoods. I'm sure this one was a popular one. Who's reporting out?
I can.
Hey, Kristen.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, Orlando? Our segment was part of a presentation with the Detroit Justice Center and the Coalition for Police Transparency and Accountability, and ALPAC, and Detroit Will Breathe. We had a one could call sobering and difficult yet open discussion that was grounded in us watching a video that was presented by the Coalition for Police Transparency and Accountability of the police shooting and death of Hakeem Littleton in the neighborhood. And from there, asked the question, what does it mean to create policing and safety for communities, and what are our thoughts about that? And it brought up questions that range from the ways in which Black and brown bodies are criminalized, including young Black and brown bodies, like children, and how children aren't seen as children. We talked about the ways in which the question of policing is tied to not only systemic racism, but in particular the policing of Black bodies where they can and can't go, and so in a ways, maintaining the racism and segregation that exists in society, and just talked about like what it means to put resources into communities that actually keep folks safe, and what it means to listen to those communities when they say what resources they need in order to do that. So certainly it was a conversation that needs to continue, and really more about people kind of sharing and expressing their concerns, knowing that the issue of safety is a real thing, but thinking of how to reimagine that without the punitive practices and policies of the police department and the carceral state. So that was it.
Wow, sounds robust. Thank you for sharing, Tristan. We appreciate it.
For sure.
Equity and property in the neighborhood, session 5. Who's reporting out? Is that Kim or Nicole?
Hi, I'll be reporting out for our group, and I don't know how I follow Mr. Taylor's report out. Was great, and I can't wait to see the recording for it. So my name is Nicole Brown, and I am with Detroit Future City, and I, along with my colleagues Pierre Davis, Kimberly Faison, and Ashley Williams Clark, led the discussion on equity and property in neighborhoods. And so we were fortunate to be able to have a conversation that was even a bit of a broader discussion, and really also talk about land use and acquisition and transparency in that process. And so the conversation really centered around 3 different programs, and really looking at how Detroit Future City, as a innovative think and do tank and stewards of the Detroit strategic framework, are able to utilize the programs that we're working with to work with community partners to be able to help them forward their work within these areas. And so our colleagues really talked about how do you navigate the land ownership and purchase process to be able to equitably utilize open space with the East Berry Warren pilot program that was led by my colleague Pierre Davis, which really lifted up the importance of working with and building capacity of neighborhood organizations to be able to navigate lots of city systems, to be able to actually access that land and be able to make it into an active space within the community that is led and shepherded by community members. And then we focused on what does it really mean to have a housing market that is strong, and looking at how can we work with community development organizations to be able to creatively implement an an acquisition and rehab program that, when it is complete, working with a robust set of community partners from local CDOs, the CDFIs, and the City of Detroit, to be able to ensure that at the end of the pilot program, there are 70 new homeowners of affordable housing in Detroit neighborhoods. And then we rounded out our conversation, led by Ashley Williams Clark, around what does it really mean to have an economically equitable city of Detroit. And so really looking at the definition that was created and led by community members, which I do want to share with all of you all. And so our definition for that is a city where all Detroiters are meeting their unique needs, prospering and fully and fairly participating in all aspects of community within a thriving city and region. And so we were able to have a really robust conversation with our community stakeholders on the call, and really pulling apart what are some of the barriers, but what are some of the opportunities that they're seeing to move this kind of work forward. And one of the big things that came out of was, one, the importance of being able to navigate relationships within the community and all the stakeholders that you need to be able to move this work forward, but also really looking at how are we building up the capacity of our community organizations and our Black clubs, who are really on the front lines of fighting this fight, and being able to make sure that they have the resources to be able to take control of land and homes in their community, and really be able to transform those spaces into places for all Detroiters to be able to live and thrive equitably. Did I get in under my 3 minutes?
You did, and you did just fine following Tristan Taylor. He's a hard act to follow, so good job. I want to punt to, thank you, Nicole. I want to punt to Maria Salinas from Congress of Communities to talk about the conversation that happened in session 6, Revolutionary Love Between the Generations.
So yeah, it was a robust, great conversation. I want to thank Orlando, Alondra, Donna Givens, and myself, that we kind of led a conversation in regards to intergenerational work and how do we get better in this era right now to create something, that will, a mechanism or whatever we want to call it, that will be practical and effective for the now. Understanding that there's been a lot of things that were done in the 60s and 70s, but how do we really let young people and elders come together, naturally and effectively, and build a mechanism, that will be for the now, for what's happening now. Communication was huge, alignment for this movement, narrative, how do we make sure that, our young people, and we're talking, we're talking 14 to 25, and then millennials and all the in-betweens, 40, 50, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, how do we utilize each other to build power? And our main thing is, as the young people, the younger people that are in the movement with Black Lives Matter and everything that's happening on our streets, and they're out there 200 days, how do we create a visibility, that there is an understanding that they have people that have their backs, that are working on ordinances and policies and laws that complement what they're doing. I think a lot of times they feel alone out there. And we want to make sure that, they know that they're not alone. And like I said, it's the young people, and we got to respect them and create space. We learned about using verbiage like, enlighten versus educate, awareness versus educate. When we talked about let's educate our people, it makes it seem like they're not educated. And our Detroiters are the most smartest people in the world, as far as I'm concerned. We talked about really just trying to figure out how do we do something different so that young people create the space for their voice and their value to be in the front lines of what we're creating, but also respecting and understanding that there's older people that have, resources and relationships. So something came out also like, we help fund this movement. If we have those relationships, how do we, without taking it over? We don't want it. We want to be part of it. We want to, even if we're not there, we want to be there in some sense, and create an aura or presence without imposing. And we need to build that. Currently, CDAD will be taking on Building the Engine as our backbone, and they are creating a youth council that's going to start hopefully structuring and creating this mechanism. But I think it's like never before. It's just, let's not do something that's been done. Let's do something that needs to happen now, so that we got the backs, that everybody that are 50, 60, 40, 70 have the backs of our young people in this movement, and that we can be more effective and more powerful that way. So I want to thank everybody for that, the conversation.
Thank you, Maria. I'm going to punt to Yusuf.
What up, good people? Man, there was a lot of good stuff that was said. Immediately that jumps out to me, thinking about equity and what does that center, how do we center that? And for me, I think for all of us, is like, thinking about our mothers, our grandparents, people, as Maria just mentioned, like who we don't necessarily consider as educated or in the in crowd, right? But because of their equity in the neighborhoods, right? It means something. It counts for something. And so because of our privilege, because of our access to help create better policies, influence what development looks like. And when we do these things, it excludes police. Police doesn't need to be in there. They don't need to be in our community. But when we don't have equity, that's when we have police. When we don't have development, that's when we have police. When we don't have the things that we need, that's when the police come and other things. And so through this conversation, being able to centralize and connecting ourselves and understand that every voice in our neighborhood is valuable. But the central thing is our neighborhoods. And so to talk about our neighborhoods, also to challenge ourselves, in particular in our Black communities and how it influence people throughout the region, we have to move from how we see our neighborhoods. We can't continue to see them as hoods. We can't continue to see them as hoods and taking pride in hood, because that is an oppressed community. We have to call it what it is. And we say as a neighborhood, that means we're going back to invest in the people there. Despite what's going on, we're gonna build, we're gonna be the anchors. And if you moved out, that doesn't make you a bad person. If you don't want to live no more, then that doesn't make you a bad person. What makes you a bad person if you don't want to connect and help somebody? That's what makes you a bad person. Because that you moved out and where you don't see the reality of this is where we come from. And I think each and every one of us, if we go back and look at our history of our family, there was some house that our families all migrated to, that they all lived in until we was able to move on. And this is what the neighborhoods is. You know, we got to get back to that old school of doing, and this is what we're trying to facilitate and foster. And I think these what these conversations are. They're not an end all. They're just a continuation of things that you all have been doing in our different sectors. We're connecting the dots. So this will make this powerful, but it becomes more powerful by continuing to act and continue to do and continue to pull things together.
Man, and that's why we got Yusuf Shakura as one of the hosts, man. Way to drop the mic. So what we want to do is give you all an opportunity to sort of, right, Asandi, what we want to do is give you an opportunity in the chat function to sort of just say, a sentence or two about what your biggest takeaway was. What we want to do is create a poll from what we've heard in the 6 report outs, and what you are putting in the chat based on the session that you were in and based on the report outs that you heard. 1 or 2 words in the chat on what's glaring for you, what's your big takeaway, what's priority for you. And we'll try to capture some of that. Camille is creating a snap poll in real time. We would try to prioritize some of the issues that were touched upon today and put them on the agenda for a close looking at for next year. So go ahead in the chat box. Okay, it's coming in. So Camille, I'm going to name some of this stuff out, and then you can sort of figure out, do your goddess thing with the Zoom snap poll. Equity provides safety, not police. Priority for me is to figure out ways to support building community and connection that addresses people's needs. Supporting Detroit Public School students now. Reparations is greater than development. We need to locate our battles at the policy level. Yesterday's conversation centered on a new way of doing community. Yusuf just mentioned going back to what works. I believe there is a happy medium. Change our language, change our thoughts, change our actions, create change. Communicating and listening. Reimagining what expertise is. I like that. Okay, I gotta figure out, it's moving so quickly. Reimagining what expertise is and who are the experts in community development. Tristan says public housing, stop relying on the market to provide affordable housing. Reimagine what we mean by safety and police. Be vocal advocates and pathways for each other to be fully heard. Love it. I'm gonna get a few more in here. Helping people work together. The Detroit Bill of Rights focuses on basic needs, equity and policy, education and training, and the creation of inclusive policies designed to ensure equity is at the center for all aspects of community building, education, housing, and land use. Emphasizing student and youth voices. Yes, advocating for their voice to be heard and showing that youth voice matters. And I'll even take it a step further, making sure that their voice and ideas are implemented and resourcing their voice. Creating spaces that truly welcome and foster community engagement. Love it. And squash the digital divide across the city of Detroit. All right, so with what we've heard, and you guys can keep them coming. I think I did a good job of trying to get to everybody that posted something in the chat. We want to sort of, take this snap poll. I don't know where we are with it. Camille, how you doing with the poll?
I'm doing good. I'm working my magic, distilling all of these great thoughts as well as the feedback that we had earlier into some nice points. And so what I'm going to ask everybody to do is rank your top 3 issues or takeaways that you have from today. So right now I think I have 8. I'm going to look through the chat and see if I should try to create one more. Yeah, one more second.
All right, so give them that prompt one more time, Camille.
So the prompt is going to ask you to select your top 3 kind of takeaways, or like the top 3 issues that you're prioritizing based on everything you heard today, everything you learned today, the feedback that you heard from the groups that reported out, the conversation that we had earlier in the day as we were preparing for the breakout rooms, and of course the feedback that we received from all of our hosts.
All right.
One more second, because I think there's one more that we need.
This is real-time tech. I love it. I'm loving this, y'all. Y'all are, man, this is great. Okay. And so what's going to happen is a poll is going to appear in your Zoom function, and we're going to ask you to take the poll, and it's going to be appearing in just a couple of minutes, and then we have a few more. Here we go. A few more in the comments. Black and brown bodies and communities need to be invested in, not punitive institutions like prisons and police. Alignment between generations. That's from Maria Salinas. The previous comment was by Tristan Taylor. Loretta says, how we still have so many people who cares about building up our neighborhoods and helping the young people what they would like to see happen, helping the young people see what they would like to see happen. I love it. I love it. This is great feedback, guys. I would say we're ready for the poll. So let's do it.
I'm about to launch. Oh no, what happened? One second. Technology is not my friend.
It's okay. Your mom, Donna Givens, is saying we need to work harder to engage and listen to everyone in our communities, to hear them and understand their perspectives. I couldn't agree more, Donna Givens Davidson. I couldn't agree more. And I don't know if y'all know that, you know, Donna Givens Davidson is also going to be a lecturer at Columbia University next semester. I don't know, just in case y'all didn't know, we got a Columbia University lecturer on the Zoom call.
Hey, Orlando or Camille, do I need to stop the share to make room for the poll?
I would say so, because I would say so, just to be on the safe side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Acknowledge barriers of access exist for others that we may have no comprehension of. Stephen Boyle. Yeah. Donna is the whip. Oh man. We need to honor the wisdom of seniors that exist within our communities. Coming from the president of the Senior Citizens Club over on the West Side, that's Phyllis Edwards.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Look, you look young whippersnapper. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh Lord. No, so Shay,
I'm gonna do you like they used to do us back in the days. Children should be seen and not heard. No,
Hey, Cantrell is telling me I'm so wrong, but he don't know.
She didn't say that.
Oh, she didn't.
What'd you say, Maria?
5 years
We're
ago.
trying to dismantle that. We gotta hear them.
I know. I'm just talking to Orlando.
Oh no,
Did you not hear what he said to me?
That was
Orlando, be
that
nice.
was classic.
No, I love me. This is something me and Phyllis does all the time. Eric DeWicki just said he's in Phyllis's club too. Yeah, Eric DeWicki's known me since I was 7 years old. I would say so. I got all the jokes from everybody today. I love it.
I know, man. He's not from the West Side. That's what it is.
I ain't scared. Yeah, that's right. I'm from the East Side. We have no fear.
Don't worry about yourself. He didn't have a big mama. You had a big mama. You know better.
Camille, before I get myself in any more trouble, is this poll ready to go?
The poll is ready, but it's not showing up. I don't know what to do.
All right, so so maybe we can figure out a wraparound poll, Maggie, if we can't get it to show up in the chat right now. Oh, here we go. I see it.
You see it?
Yep.
Cool.
So question number 1, What are the top 3 issues you would prioritize after today? So you can pick 3 and we can see the results in real time. Can I just give a nod and a salute to Camille Johnson for making this happen in real time? That's so dope. So dope. Great ear.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Everybody voted on question 1?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. All right. There are 77 people in the chat. Right now, we only have 55 people who have completed the question. Go ahead and pick your top 3. We're going to try to get full representation. Give you a couple more seconds. We got 60 people, 77 of us here, guys. So mark your top 3.
It's getting late.
I know, we're coming. We're moving. All right, question number 2.
There was only one question.
Oh, there was only one question.
Yeah.
That was it. All right, cool.
So I can end the poll now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we see the result? Ooh, there we go. Mm-hmm.
All right, so the results are from the top 3 issues that we prioritize, 60% people are prioritizing creating and sustaining equity and inclusion in community development. Wow. 58% of attendees said that they are prioritizing supporting and empowering youth. And the one underneath that, 48% are prioritizing partnership, movement, and coalition building. Right underneath there, right behind the top 3, we have policy advocacy at 37%. We have communicating and listening at 27%. Community-focused placemaking, community-driven safety at 29%. Community-focused placemaking at 23%, and enlightenment and awareness building at 11%. All right, y'all. Y'all did good. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Y'all are amazing.
So I'm wondering if there's ways to incorporate some of those things. For example, could we incorporate community safety, driven safety into some of those other, like the coalition building work and the youth leadership work?
It's open for discussion. Come on, guys. What do you guys think of Donna's suggestion? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Donna.
I just hate to leave that on the table because safety is one of the big issues in our community. And I really love the concept around rethinking what public safety looks like. And we keep on not really having those conversations.
I appreciate that perspective. Is there an opportunity, Donna or anybody else, do you see an opportunity to collapse any of these priorities into one? Donna,
Can we see them back up?
Yep.
So we'll know what they are for sure.
This is Ruth. As a point, and I'm not mad at anybody or upset, but policy advocacy is a strategy. Communicating and listening is part of anything we do. I don't see it as separate, when we talk about prioritizing and maybe lifting up and make sure we're doing it. but I think there's some overlap for me on, in order to have equitable and inclusive community development sector, we need to listen. We need advocacy. We need to build power. So it's hard for me to see these as separate.
I think the emphasis is separate though, because we have tended to have policy and advocacy and supporting our youth without really having real focused and intentional efforts at communicating and listening. We don't have town halls where we're really going into the places where people who don't show up at meetings are. You know, we're not in, I think that Brandon Snyder does a good job through Detroit Action of really communicating with homeless people, for example, or returning citizens, or people who are, you know, on the verge of homelessness. So we hear from a subset of our community, and then we consider that to be the listening that we need to do. I don't think that we go far enough.
I want to add real quick, salute Donna for bringing this up. And truth be told, all this is a both and, not an either or. And all these should be added to, I mean, when we say enlightenment and awareness building, if it probably said education or educated, it probably would have got more. But because we're challenging radically to rethink and reimagine, it got less. So we're doing a disservice to ourselves by the framework that we have and getting to this conversation, because all of them matter. So the real work is connecting them, and we can have, you know, subtopics, and the topics, and they can be pushed in for the objective.
Well said.
I want to just highlight a couple of things in the chat while we're having this discussion. I think it's great, and we have time. We had a little bit of time for this discussion. Listening to our younger people as well. They are primary users. This is a great point of public spaces. How often are their voices included in all of the constant new development and plans? That's Whitley Granberry. Thank you for that. Stephen Boyle says, I think communicating and listening is where internet access fits in these. Agree with getting people that aren't heard a path to be heard. There's too much to be labeled inclusive, and the inclusion is always narrowed by what outreach has been done. Izzy says, yeah, I see a lot of possible overlap with these tools for these two. For instance, in the youth breakout session I just attended, we discussed DPS students' push to reallocate funds going towards the Detroit Public School Police Department to go towards school counselors and other student resources instead, in the interest of, you know, DPS student safety. Let me pause here and get a sense of what everybody is feeling in terms of, all right, so if we collapse some of these and put them into one and, you know, sort of prioritize, what is there strategy to sort of tackle all of these at once, right? And sort of walk and chew gum, because I hear Yusuf saying, you know, both and when we look at all of this now, it seems pretty big. It seems like it's a lot on the plate for us to sort of explore and tackle. What are your thoughts toward, you know, chipping away at a lot of this as a sector, as the community development sector? Anybody?
So yeah, I think one thing that we really want to be true to youth voice, that there's whatever we come up as our 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 that we're going to present to building the engine and CDAD, that everything's done with youth voice. So we add youth voice to every spectrum of work that is done under building the engine that's going to go to CDAD.
I think we need to identify areas of hot points, or areas where we're going to be involved. So if it's housing, then with housing, we need to create and sustain equity and inclusion as part of it. We need to support and empower youth in discussing housing. We need a policy advocacy framework. We need to communicate and listen. We need partnership, movement, and coalition building. We need to do all of these things in some way to ensure that we're doing the right thing. If we're talking about police reform or changing the nature of policing, whatever language we want to use, that's an inclusive language, I think again, we need to do things. I think we need to listen and empower youth. I think we need to create and sustain equity and inclusion. So I don't know that these are strategies and tactics to get there. And I think that what we need to figure out is what we're going to focus on. So, you know, I care about housing. What we haven't talked about is sustainability or climate equity. And, you know, that's kind of where I live. And so I think that we also need to put climate equity on the table. But
anybody want to speak to that or have a response to that? So sort of, Donna, if I'm hearing you, you're saying all of these are tenets that could be applied to different areas of work and advocacy or activism. So we're talking about housing. All of these tenets need to go into our housing strategy. If we're talking about police reform, if we're talking about climate equity, if we're talking about youth development or workforce and jobs and economy. Okay. Anybody else before we
Orlando, it's Madhavi. Can I add something?
Yes.
I think I just want to make sure that no one sort of leaves this meeting thinking this is like the one chance to add something to this like list of things, that this is really like a forever and ongoing conversation. So I know we're trying to sort of prioritize some things here, but I want to make sure that we're in agreement that this is not the results of like this poll or whatever decisions we're making right now aren't sort of long lasting. This isn't like the time we have to decide everything. These are like ongoing conversations, but it's good to start the conversation here. That's all. I just want to say that there's not pressure to like figure it all out right now in this moment.
Thank you for that, Madhavi. Thank you for that. All right, with 10 minutes left, we gotta, wrap it up. So what we want to do, I want to punt to Alondra.
I just wanted to, Lindsay made a comment in the chat that I just wanted to make sure that everyone heard because a lot of people agreed with it. Lindsay said, I think youth are often consulted on youth issues, but why isn't land use or housing youth issues? And a lot of people agree with that. So I just wanted to bring that up in case anybody missed it. But since we're ending the conversation, I just want to remind you all that all of the sessions, the breakout sessions were recorded. So if you all want to go back and listen to them again or go and hear a different breakout session you weren't able to go to, we will be posting those soon. But please stay connected by following following or adding Building the Engine on Facebook. And also check out the website. I think those are going to be dropped in the chat if I'm not mistaken. And we will be publishing a list of everyone who participated on our website. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Orlando.
All right, thank you, Alondra. So we'll also be preparing, publishing a resource list that our breakout group leaders help to complete with information, tools, and research that they've done that you will find useful. Everybody sent in a list of resources that they weren't able to share within the breakout groups. And so we're going to publish that. We'll also be preparing a summary of the key points and action steps that came out of this summit by January and linking that to the website and Facebook page. So, and as my trusted co-host Alondra said, stay in touch with Building the Engine of Community Development in Detroit on the website and Facebook page. And all of that information is in the chat. Listen, I want to thank everyone from the last 2 days who participated as a panelist and as an organizer of a breakout session. The success of this could not have happened without you. So we want to thank you for your time and we want to thank you for your participation. I want to thank the Summit Planning Committee, the Building the Engine Steering Committee, and the Building the Engine staff and funders. We want you to fill out the survey. So Lauren is going to be posting the survey in the chat. We want you to fill out the survey, right? And if you have other closing comments that you want to put on record, because the record will be published, you can put some more closing comments in the chat. And I am going to officially close day 2 and finish this summit and turn it over to Maggie DeSantis, the initiative manager for building the engine of community development in Detroit. Maggie?
Thank you, Orlando. I have the best job in the world, which is to ask everyone to please give a big round of virtual applause to our 3 hosts, Orlando Bailey, Youssef Bunchy Shakur, and Alondra Alvarez. Yay! Woo, 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 woo. Thank you, 3. Back to you, Orlando.
It's actually on Yusuf. Thanks, Maggie.
Oh, back to Yusuf. All right.
Damn, it's been great. Just something for you guys to take away and think about. We did have some questions, but just take with yourselves. You know, what type of partnerships can we build out of this? How do we intersect the civic, the social and racial justice, and the youth, and et cetera. I mean, sometimes it's only in these spaces that we see each other and we say, hey, we need to connect, and we don't talk about it until we see each other again in these spaces. And then there's a lot of folks on here whose voices may not been heard, that we need to dig deeper. I mean, there's some ground level folks that's really out there struggling and fighting and making some difference. I mean, particularly those who are more sustainable in our organization. I think that's what equity has to look like. This is what this work has to look like. Again, you don't have to be from the neighborhoods, but you got to care about people. And I think this is what the heart of building the engine is and should be. And if it's not what we want to be, then join, sign up, get involved. That's what happened. The short story of it is I kind of, I crashed the party. Now I'm part of the party. So it's a beautiful thing.
I was there when he crashed the party. Listen, survey link is in the chat. That was a time. What a great time. Survey link is in the chat. Please take the survey. Thank you all so much. Please be safe. Wear your mask. Have a great holiday season. You'll receive a gift card from Building the Engine for participating. So thank you, and thank you. We'll see you next time. Don't forget that survey.
Orlando, can I add something before we end?
Sure.
Can we give another round of applause for the young people who presented?
Woo! Woo, 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 woo.
I just think that's so amazing because right now they're going through virtual school and there's just so much going on. So thank y'all for showing up.
Nope.
And thank you, Maggie and Lauren and all the team for building the engine. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good night.
Stay out of trouble, youngster.
Bye, beautiful people.
Bye.
I'll see you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.